Hello everyone, Derek Johnson with Tatango.com. It is Sunday, the day before Mobile World Congress 2019, and I'm in Barcelona in a hotel. I actually just got back from the GSMA RCS Lab. This is the day before, so Sunday, and this is where a lot of industry insiders get together and they present what's going on with RCS, how many adoptions within each carrier there are, and then there's a lot of demos from providers that do RCS, so just a bunch of RCS information. This RCS lab was crazy long. It was 29 different speakers. I took a ton of notes, and I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as possible. One thing to note, this is not every single person that presented. I'm sorry if I couldn't get to you. A lot of them were really not that applicable to brands, and brands are usually the ones watching the video. So also, a few of these, they were so intense that I asked the speaker that if we could maybe later on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at the actual conference review the slides. So I'll go through those as well and tell you when that's going to happen. I'm going to be at Mobile World Congress Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm going to be filming a ton of RCS demos, talking to industry people about RCS adoption, everything that has to do with RCS. If you want to stay up to date and follow us, be sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel, follow me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can definitely find us. Again, Derek Johnson at Tatango.com. So let's start off with it. First off, GSMA. Big props to them. They continue to put on these GSMA RCS labs, which help people understand about RCS. And the sponsor this time was Mavenir. So check them out. So interesting, when he first got up there on stage from Mavenir, he said 2019 is the year of RCS. That was kind of the theme of this RCS lab. And you're kind of seeing it with a lot of people that were at this lab. They've been at these labs for years, and maybe the first couple of years it wasn't that good, no adoption. Now you're starting to see, on phones you can actually use RCS. Now in the United States it's still very, very low, but we're starting to kind of see the ball rolling. So that was the theme. 2019 is the year of RCS. I think it's going to be more 2020, 2021, once you get kind of up in that 20% adoption rate in the United States and maybe 30% in 2023. But again, that's also United States. I focus on the United States because that's where my customers are. It was very interesting to hear people from like Africa or Egypt, and they're like, oh, RCS adoption is going to be 95, 98% because of the fact that everybody's on Android over there and nobody's on iPhone. At least that's what I was told. In the United States, it's very different, and we have kind of a dual system with Android and iPhone and maybe some other different types of devices that may or may not support RCS. It's still up in the air. So I'm going to go through this. It's going to be a long video, but feel free to fast forward it. But I'll try to kind of hit the highlights here. And unfortunately, I'm not gonna put the slides up. I tried to take as many photos. Maybe I'll post them. So look in the comments. I might post them there, the photos I took. But it was just, there's too much content that happened. It was essentially like 8 or 9 hours of just RCS content. So let's get into it. Number one, Vodafone and 3C Interactive. They got up on stage. They did a GSMA demo. So this is really cool. GSMA now has its own RCS chatbot, which makes sense because GSMA is the one kind of pushing RCS forward. So it makes sense that they now have their own chatbot. This was made in partnership with 3C Interactive. So they got up there. It was really cool to see kind of GSMA been touting RCS, for so many years, and now actually they can use RCS to connect with people at the conference. So they're going to be sending a series of 9 mass messages. This is cool because usually people are talking about chatbots. This is actually a mass messaging campaign for RCS. So there's going to be 9 mass RCS messages that are going to be going out throughout the conference, telling people where to eat, where to go, how to pick up their badges, stuff like that. So that was really interesting. That was the first presentation. Usually these presentations, 15 minutes to 30 minutes. And I'm skipping a lot of their content, but I just want to get through as much as I can. Then you have Henry from the GSMA. He went through what are kind of the consistent slides every single time. It shows the world, then it shows how many deployments there are, and then it shows how many new deployments there are. And there are a ton of new deployments. United States, it's still slowly kind of getting there. Obviously better with the help of Google and AT&T and Samsung and I will be talking about the adoption numbers a little later on. So that was the second one, and I'm going to skip some people here. 3, this was really interesting, from Mavenir. You had Carlos, and his was very interesting because a lot of people that watch these videos, they look at it from the brand perspective. I'm Chipotle, I'm McDonald's, and I want to send an RCS message. How much is it? What the adoption rate is? Well, a lot of the people in this room are interested in selling RCS or providing the tools and infrastructure to the carriers, the wireless carriers. We're talking like AT&T or all the carriers in the world, and there's a lot of them. So this company, Mavenir, they sell a certain product, an RCS product, to the wireless carriers. They had some interesting info, which I found interesting, which they said, and I'm reading from my notes here, they said that carriers launching RCS on their own networks, there were a few kind of drawbacks or concerns. So Tatango, we have, or brands, they have concerns about RCS and they bring them to Tatango. Well, Mavenir has carriers that they work with. The carriers bring them their concerns. This was interesting because I usually don't get this kind of insight. So first carrier concern about RCS is there's too many partners or vendors. Ecosystem is way too crazy. It's just very complex. That's number 1. Number 2, this was interesting. How to protect the SMS revenue stream, the existing SMS revenue stream. So a lot of these carriers, they're making a lot of money from SMS, from A to P or P to A, whatever they're doing, business messaging. They're making a lot of money from SMS. So they're concerned that, hey, if we add RCS and we spend a ton of money doing it, is it just going to cannibalize the revenue that we're already making on SMS? Great question. Number 3, which was the third and final one, is it's uncharted territory for the wireless carriers. They have concerns about spam, privacy, security. There's just a lot of stuff that they're unsure about. And when they go and look at maybe some of the bigger wireless carriers, those carriers are just as unsure as well. So it's a hard thing to kind of get their head around. So 3 different things that Mavenir was saying that are issues for the wireless carriers. So when Mavenir goes out and tries to sell a wireless carrier on adding RCS to their suite, that's what they're hearing back, their sales team. So that was interesting. Then we had Vodafone. This was interesting. RCS is live in 14 markets, and they were clear, which I really like. They were clear that 14 markets is P2P, person to person or peer to peer. It's essentially me texting you. Me is my person, not my company. And then they made it clear, which I liked, was they have 8 of those 14 markets that are active in A2P, application to person. So a computer sending out a message. So that was great. They touted a lot of stuff. Click-through rates, they said, for the campaigns that they're running for their clients. Vodafone's interesting because they're a carrier, but then also they provide software and suite of tools for brands to actually use RCS on Vodafone. So they kind of straddle two. They said click-through rates are up to 13% higher than, I'm guessing SMS. They didn't make it clear. They just said, click-through rates are 13% higher, 13 times higher. Sorry, not 13%, 13 times higher. Again, I don't know what that is. I'm guessing they were referencing SMS, and you have to be aware. They said up to. It's kind of marketing and sales speak. Yes, they have some people that have got up to 13 times the click-through rate. So I wouldn't expect if you launch an RCS campaign and you're comparing it to SMS, you're going to get 13 times better click-through rate. Some of your messages, some campaigns, some brands, some uses will get 13 times, maybe. Who knows? Okay, and then a lot of demos. Also, I'm going to be filming a lot of these demos on the trade floor, so I'm not going to talk about what the actual demo was until you can actually see it on video here. Then we had Ron from Summit. He was talking about enabling carriers to add stuff in addition to kind of the basic RCS features, which we've highlighted on this this channel, wherever you're watching it. This was really interesting because it is kind of far-fetched, But we saw some really interesting demos where they were putting into RCS like live video chat, which I thought was really cool. So like retail, I could fire up an RCS message, I could chat with them, I could pick like sizing, and then I could be like, I want to talk to a sales rep. I would just want to click. And then within the RCS, at least that's what it looked like, within the RCS kind of chat, it actually created a live chat with somebody at the retail store that I could chat with. That was pretty cool. Again, not in the current specs, but it kind of showed the future of where this could go, which was interesting. Okay, then you had Mobile Squared. So Mobile Squared, if you watch our videos, they're the ones that just released the number that at the end of this year, 2019, will be about, in the United States, about 17% adoption of RCS business messaging. It's higher for non-business messaging. But so they're a research firm out of the UK. They have a ton of data. And they had so much data that I was like scribbling down every little single thing, and it blew my mind, all the data. So what I decided to do is I reached out to Mobile Squared. They're going to be at the conference, and I said, we need to review all of your slides. They had like 10 slides of just amazing data. So be sure you subscribe to our channel because I'm going to be going through all of this, and it is crazy info. Not about, there is adoption rate obviously in there, but then there's about how much they think the wireless carriers will make from RCS, if they're charging businesses. How much will aggregators make? What is, SMS plus RCS in terms of revenue? How much revenue will carriers make per user? They have all of this data, which was just completely insane. So stay tuned for that information. They did a really good job, and they've been a great friend of ours for giving us info. Then we had 3C Interactive. It was interesting. They did a bunch. They've been really at the forefront of kind of evangelizing SMS. John Duffy, their CEO, good friend. He has been at every RCS lab pretty much from the start. So he has been really evangelizing RCS. What was great to hear from their company, and they did a couple demos, and they'll do a couple demos on the trade show, which hopefully we'll get on video. They said brands are waiting for, and if you're a brand, drop a comment below and tell me if this is correct. Number one, reach and adoption. Makes sense in the United States. We're maybe less, 10%, 5% adoption rate. Maybe at the end of this year, we'll be at about 17%. That's number one, reach and adoption. There needs to be more customers for brands to be interested in RCS. Number two, pricing model. I've talked about this on video. We need a pricing model. A brand can't evaluate anything without price. And then number three, this was interesting because I really haven't talked about this, and I don't hear this that much, but it's interesting to hear from 3C Interactive that they do, is brands want the same experience on different handsets and different carriers. So essentially they're saying, 3C Interactive is saying that when they talk to brands about RCS, there's three things the brands want: reach, pricing model, and then kind of consistency of experience, which makes sense. The consistency of experience, if you're on a T-Mobile phone, it shouldn't look completely different than if you're on an AT&T phone. So really great feedback and great information from 3C Interactive, really out and speaking to kind of the crowd, because the crowd there is really trying to sell RCS to the brands, and that really helps getting their feedback. Okay, got a couple more. Great Deutsche Telekom, they did some great demos, but we're going to see those later on in the week on the video. Oh, then we had Google. So Google, they announced that they have 260 channel partners. These are people that can run RCS messages on their network. They are live in North America with 60 public brands using RCS. So this includes US, Canada, and Mexico. So 60 plus brands in US, Canada, and Mexico are already using RCS through Google. That's pretty cool because years ago it was zero. So we're definitely seeing, kind of the rise of RCS, whether it's, Samsung, AT&T, Google, everybody is kind of, using RCS, touting RCS, putting some brands on it. A lot of them are demos or tests, but it's great to see that 60 brands have already kind of registered and are live with an RCS messaging campaign. And then at the last portion of the Google presentation, they are announcing a new tool. It's called RBM. Rich Business Messaging is the same as, I think it's the same as RCS. I think we as an industry need to come together and say there's only one kind of acronym, but they call it the RBM, Developer Console, which essentially is kind of like a WYSIWYG editor that allows normal people like myself and marketers to go in and create RCS chatbots. I'm not sure if it's live yet, but they did announce that it was coming and it's a new tool. Okay, this was really cool. There was a company there. I don't know if it's a company, it might be a nonprofit. It was called Turn, T-U-R-N. This had really nothing to do with kind of what we do here at Tatango, but they run SMS chatbots essentially in countries where maybe medical access is less than kind of the United States or Canada or UK. And they essentially sign up mothers and text them information, and mothers can text them back during pregnancy and essentially kind of help the mother through the process. And it was very interesting to see their demo. It was more interesting to see the evolution from SMS to RCS and all the other different channels. They're on like Facebook and WhatsApp and all the different OTT messaging solutions. It was very interesting to see that kind of the ability to help these women really increased as the technology increased, from just an SMS to really these rich kind of messaging solutions. So they were super excited about RCS and OTT and just rich messaging in general to help all these women. Then you had CM. They were interesting because they had a couple demos and they were kind of explaining their solution. But what's interesting about them is they gave feedback, kind of like 3C Interactive did. They gave feedback about how their salespeople are overcoming some of the hurdles that they're kind of having to jump over during the sales process for RCS messaging. So what they found, and what was interesting, they threw out a couple things. They were the ones that did the booking.com demo. You can search for that on YouTube. You'll see our video. They have sent, since starting RCS at cm.com, they've sent 24 million RCS messages. Now, they're an international company, so a lot of those, I bet, are international messages, but it's pretty cool. 24 million RCS messages since they started using RCS messaging. So then back to that difficulty of selling RCS, which I think kind of ties into the adoption rate and everything that we're hearing. I think what's happening is RCS is so cool, but you can't really demo it on a customer's phone because the chance that the customer in the United States has the right phone and the right network and the right RCS version, it's very unlikely at this point. So what they were finding is that video works really, really well to help the sales process. Makes sense. Now, not these kind of videos. I thought they were going to say that, but they didn't. They were talking about essentially filming the phone in the RCS experience for the brand and then sending the video to them and saying, hey, here's what it looks like. Made sense. And really, I think that's because of the fact that consumers and marketers, they can't really most of the time access RCS on their phone. So it's kind of useless. Unlike SMS and MMS, SMS, we send demos all the time. We're like, hey, just text, join to 12345. Oh, you see it? Okay, good. Here's the video. Here's an image. Okay, great. They're doing it on their phone, but because of the adoption rate, there's just not that many phones with RCS. So that's one thing that I thought was a really cool sales hack for people that are selling RCS. Then you had LivePerson. This is a company that is a public company. It was really cool to have their CEO speaking. They are really excited about RCS because they are really heavily invested in OTT messaging like Apple Business Chat, which actually was the first time anybody in that conference or session mentioned Apple Business Chat. They're into Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp. They are just, yeah, so this was interesting. Half of all Apple business clients run on LivePerson. LivePerson, they were the ones that originally started website chat. So you could text back, or not text, but like type on your computer. And obviously with technology, mobile phones and messaging, they're starting to move more towards kind of these messaging applications, OTT. I don't think that they're currently running any RCS campaigns, but they have really high aspirations for RCS because they see it as just another channel in addition to Apple Business Chat, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp. And then they have this really cool, which I'm still kind of learning about. Hopefully I'll get more information, this Maven product. And it's really interesting because it throws it back almost like 10 years to kind of like the 4Info days. If you're part of the industry, you know what that company was. Where 4Info, they started and it was supposed to be kind of like a search engine via SMS. So I'd text in, hey, I'm looking for a car, or I'm looking for a place to eat tonight. And then they would send back results and they would monetize those results. Well, it's interesting because LivePerson has like 20,000 brands already using their platform for customer support and chatbot type things. And now they're saying is, hey, you know, carriers, AT&T, T-Mobile, international carriers, why don't you white label this thing we call Maven? And you could, I'll just use example, AT&T. AT&T could have their own, just call it AT&T Super Chatbot. And the Super Chatbot would be installed on everybody's phone, and AT&T customers could text into the Super Chatbot and could say like, hey, I'm looking for, you know, a restaurant tonight. Then a live person respond back and do some kind of due diligence and figure out kind of vetting, like what are they looking for, where are they? And then what's very interesting is live person would then essentially kick them or push them to the, like, let's say it's a pizza place, the pizza place that they recommend, it would push them to that pizza place, their RCS chatbot. So AT&T, hypothetically, would have this chatbot that would be branded themselves, but it would be a Maven product, which is from LivePerson. They would send that traffic then to the branded chatbot for the actual brand. Really interesting, some interesting business models there, as you can imagine, because of the conversion. You're essentially sending, consumers to a brand, which is exactly what Google does, which is interesting because Google is in the room. Everybody's trying to monetize this right now. It was an interesting kind of revenue stream and model, which I haven't seen, but I have seen like 10 years ago, but the technology wasn't there during 4Info because it was just SMS. And at the start, I don't think you could even click on the links in a text message. That's how old I'm getting. Okay, that was a live person, and I'll get more info. Hopefully we can see some demos from that. And then we had Neil from AT&T. He was showing all the chatbot directory. So if you have a Samsung device on the AT&T network, a new Samsung device like the Galaxy S9, hopefully the Galaxy S10 in a little bit, you will see that there's now a chatbot directory. So kind of like an app directory on like an iPhone, there's now a chatbot directory. There's about 20 different brands in there and you can kind of interact with them. It's all powered by RCS. He was telling us there was some very interesting data from that. One of the interesting pieces of data was the swing between interactions, consumer interactions, how many interactions per session a consumer is doing with a chatbot. On average, I'm pretty sure I have this right, on average it was about 3.5 replies. So back and forth with the chatbot 3.5 times. There was huge outliers where people were interacting like hundreds of times per session, but most of them were kind of in that middle. So it was definitely kind of a bell curve, but really steep in the middle. And what was interesting though is he was laying out news, entertainment, I think something else like an AI chatbot, and it really had a significant difference between how many interactions each category of chatbot had. So the 3.5 is the average, but some were like up in the, I think like 10s or 50, session or replies per session. Some were very low, like news was very low. AI, like a chatbot, like you're chatting and playing games with somebody, that was very high. That was very interesting. Also, the graph of the amount of phones and people that are seeing this chatbot directory was right up and to the right. Right now, it's about 16 million uniques, I think, or customers, AT&T customers, are visiting the chatbot directory per month. 16 million. That's about 500,000 per day that are going into the directory. So huge chance for exposure for brands to be in that directory. And kind of changes things, because up until maybe the chatbot directory, the majority of messaging was outbound. It wasn't discoverable unless you went into the retail store and opted in. Now it is becoming discoverable with things like the AT&T chatbot directory, maybe LivePerson, all these different things that people are coming up with. They're making chatbots and messaging discoverable, which means the consumer can discover it without the brand kind of pushing it on them. Okay, then we had Virgin Trains. Virgin Trains, I'm pretty sure, was the first RCS deployment by a brand. They do some really cool stuff. What was interesting about this one, they started with SMS way back in the day for essentially, if you live in Europe or if you've been in Europe, you know, you look up at the board and the minute it says, hey, you need to go to track 4, everybody rushes there. Well, essentially they built an SMS system that, you know, families and the disabled and elderly, they would get a text message before it went up on the board, so then they wouldn't get trampled. And it worked really, really well. People loved it, and then they started staggering kind of alerts, so, you know, people would know, you know, when to board, and they wouldn't all just rush at the same time. What he was super kind of excited about was the evolution of messaging to RCS, and then how much more they can include in the message. So right now, with the SMS version, it's just, hey, track 4, go there. That's pretty much it. Then RCS went, oh, here's, you know, a map of the train. Here's where your seat is. And then in the future, they listed all the stuff that they're going to be doing and adding to RCS. Hey, you want to upgrade? You know, while you're walking to the train, why don't you upgrade? Payments, they had a list of just stuff that they were going to do with RCS, which really they couldn't do with SMS. So really great example from Virgin Trains, that's in the UK. And then there was Number AI. They did an interesting presentation about how the carriers and how software providers should be looking at the pricing model. It was really interesting because they were essentially referencing how companies like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, how they're starting to monetize it and saying, hey guys, you know, these companies like WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, WeChat, they are really getting this right by giving away a lot of free stuff and then getting adoption and then starting to charge for premium features. So this would be, for example, hey, maybe you can send a free message, but if you want to include video, you got to pay a little more. If you want to include the ability to add a calendar reminder, or if you want to connect to an AI chatbot so you can like understand natural language, you have to, you know, pay a little more. That was kind of what he was saying, but it was interesting just to hear the different kind of pricing models. Again, what's kind of frustrating is there is no pricing model yet. There's 3 different pricing models, but there's no actual price for each model. So he was kind of saying, hey guys, here, maybe we don't charge for the first little bit, and then we gain adoption, then we start charging, or we charge for premium features. I think he maybe opened up a few people's minds that are just so dead set on, from day one, we're going to be charging 1 cent, and it's going to be 1 cent. It was kind of interesting to hear his perspective on what has worked for companies like WhatsApp and OTT messaging. Okay, that was it. That was 29 presenters. Some of them I didn't include because they're more kind of carrier-based. It doesn't really matter for brands. There were a few demos like from AccuWeather that were very heavily graphical, which doesn't make sense if I'm talking on video here. I will try to get you guys the slides as soon as possible. And tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday, we will be filming at Mobile World Congress 2019 We'll be talking with SMS marketing companies, aggregators, carriers, and then we'll be filming RCS demos because I know everybody's super excited to see all these demos. I heard there's like 20 or 30 plus demos that are going on during the conference, so we will be busy. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to our email list, whatever you want to do to get our videos, because we're going to be posting as much as we can, and then after the conference, we'll start releasing those videos. If you are at Mobile World Congress 2019, be sure to say hi. And again, my name is Derek Johnson with Tatango.com, and this has been a recap of the GSMA RCS Lab that happened on Sunday before Mobile World Congress 2019 in Barcelona.